and welcome to this segment of my crafting tips. Today we are using Dreamweaver stencils with a Kaleidacolor background and using Brilliance ink as a resist. We'll be working on glossy cardstock for the resist, and then we'll put it all on a craft card with some distress ink finishes. Hope you have fun and enjoy this session. Thank you. Okay, crafters, we're going to get started here doing our Kaleidacolor background and resist technique with the Brilliance pads. So first I'm going to tape down my piece of paper because I don't want it to move while I'm working with the stencil. And then the next step is I tape my stencil down because I don't want it to move either. And we will be using the Ranger foam applicator, ink foam applicator, Brilliance Archival ink Galaxy Gold, and Galaxy Gold will act as a resist. With these pads, you want to make sure that they're well inked before you start using them. With our stencil taped down, we're going to grab our foam ink applicator and our archival Brilliance Gold pad. The Brilliance acts as a resist for this technique, as does any of the Versamark, the Watermark, Ranger's Watermark ink pads. So I'm pouncing on the ink pad to get some color on my foam applicator, and then I'm just going to pounce all over my stencil. And this pouncing method pushes the ink through the stencil and onto the paper without getting underneath the thin metal pieces. I have found I really like this method for applying color to paper through a stencil. So it's going to take just a few seconds here to get all the color on there that we want, and you want a fair amount of color on there because remember, this is going to act as your resist. The metallic colors with Brilliance work the best. So I'm using gold. You could use Platinum Planet. You can use the copper. I found both of those colors work well. Platinum Planet I like. The silver also works well. And just remember, if you're using a darker color, to be aware of the top colors of the inks that you are going to apply to the paper. Okay, this is looking good. And always put your inner lid back on your Brilliance pad. All right, so we're going to remove the stencil, remove our paper, and there you can see it says Merry Christmas in wonderful gold. Looks great. Now our next step is we're going to use the Kaleidacolor pads. These are a rainbow pad from Sukaneko. I'm also using a small brayer, and I am going to brayer on the ink right on top of this Brilliance that I've put down. And remember, when you do this, you sort of want to stay in your lane so that I'm not rolling up my green and going over and contaminating my red. So every time you put the brayer back on the pad, you want to stay in your lanes and stay in the same place. So just covering everything right up here with the inks. And as with the Brilliance pad, when you start pouncing, you want to make sure your ink pads are well inked. You can see this is nice and juicy, and that's a good thing for us because we're actually going to end up buffing off a lot of this ink. So now I'm ready to do the next side, so I'm going to rotate that and staying in my lanes, keeping my brayer exactly the same. I'm adding color. And this is a technique that will give you good inky fingers. Okay, we've got enough on there. And pull your pads apart when you use your the Kaleidacolor. You want to be sure to pull your pads apart when you're done to close it so the colors don't migrate and turn to some mushy color. Now we're going to do the buffing part, the magic of this, and we're just going to buff right up. And there is the first part of our Christmas card. Now it's time to add color to our card. We're going to start with a craft card, just a greeting card here, and we're going to, that's what our Merry Christmas will be layered on. But if we just add the Merry Christmas right now, it's sort of plain, and I think it just needs a little something else to jazz it up a bit. So I'm going to be using Ranger's Distress Peeled Paint ink pad and a foam ink applicator for this technique. I'm going to sort of distress or add color to the edges of the card, and I do that by pouncing, again, tamping my foam ink applicator on the ink pad and rubbing, going in a circular motion around my edges of the card. This is going to give it a nice green tint. And I will have to say, peeled paint is one of my favorite greens in this line. Okay, so there we have a little edging with the green on our card. Maybe slightly hard to see. Now I'm going to use a stencil. I've got a holly flourish stencil by Dreamweaver, and I want a little holly design in both corners. So I'm going to position it so I've got it sort of going at an angle. I'm going to tape it down with my blue painter's tape. I'm also going to tape down my card so it does not move. I will be using a piece of cardboard that I've cut into an L shape to protect my card so that I do not get ink on the card where I don't want ink. Now I'm just pouncing again, same as I did with the Merry Christmas on the glossy cardstock for the Kaleidacolor. And we don't need a lot of color. You don't need it to be really dark, really intense, unless you want it to. You could. In this case, I don't. And so I've got a little bit done there. And now I'm going to rotate and work in the other corner. Get that done just so. And tape everything down again. Cropping L comes out. And we're going to pounce. And I also hold my cropping L down and my stencil together at the same time. When you're working with stencils, it's always good to have some firm pressure on your stencil with the other hand so that it doesn't move around while you're adding color. So let's see what this looks like. Very nice. So there we have a little color on our cards. Okay, we are ready to put the finishing touches on this card. I've got my Merry Christmas that we used the Brilliance ink to act as the resist, and we brayered over it with Kaleidacolor. I've actually put double stick tape on the back. I'm a big double stick tape fan, and my theme is sort of keep it clean and simple, so this is a clean and simple card, but I still feel like it needs a little something else. So I am going to use Stickles. Right here, this is by Ranger. This is a nice red glitter glue, and I'm going to add some little red glitters to the holly, or where the berries are on the holly stencil. And you may find your glue gets little goobers on it. Just pull them off because it likes to dry. And bear in mind when you use glitter glue, that it does take a little while for it to dry. It's not an instant dry product. So you will need to set your card aside and not do anything to it for a little while. And I'm just using just little dabs on here just to add a little highlight, a little visual interest. And there we are. Hope you have fun. Thanks for joining me.